reasons why laboratories choose to implement a LIMS system. Now, some of the more common reasons are to reduce time spent on manual data entry, also to reduce transcription errors, and to keep track of where samples are up to in the laboratory workflow. But overall, to create more efficient processes for a more successful laboratory. Now, here are some results of a more extensive and a formal survey that was conducted with our LIMS1 users, showing how LIMS1 actually improved their overall organisation. Now, you can see it was quite clear once the survey was completed that the majority of our customers saw that LIMS1 helped their business by increasing the overall productivity, which is very much in line with why organisations chose to implement a LIMS system. Now, just a little bit of background on LIMS1. LIMS1 was created in 1992 and it has been successfully implemented in over 50 sites all over Australia in many different types of industries, including over 90% of council laboratories on the east coast of Australia. Now, our mission is to provide laboratories with an easy and flexible LIMS system, as well as product and services for superior laboratory management. We aim to incorporate ease and flexibility into all of our software products. And we also try to carry this idea not only with our services, but in the delivery of LIMS1 as well. All of the staff at LIMS1 have got a wide range of experience in laboratory management. So from consulting to the operations, and we work with you to help you achieve your specific outcomes within a time frame that works for you to ensure that it fits in with your business requirements. Now, LIMS1, the system itself, is an easy and a flexible system. The product comprises of fully integrated modules that allow you to individually tailor the system to your needs. Now, there are many different types of productivity modules and they can be added to the core system at any time. Now, some of these include invoicing, instrument interfaces, quality control modules, and a web portal, and that's just to name a few. Now, the core system itself has got a lot of functionality and it manages the laboratory process from the initial stages of sample registration all the way through to the final stages of approving the work and reporting to the client. All aspects such as test parameters, worksheets for your chemists, workflow of the laboratory, and report formats, it can all be easily configured by laboratory personnel. Now, with that very quick overview of LIMS1, I'll hand over to the guy that you've really tuned into here, and that's Mr. Ron Fisher.
Welcome, Ron. We'll just hand over to you now.
Hello, welcome everybody to the LIMS1 webinar. I'm at Swinburne University, and that's a university within Victoria. That teaches a lot of programs, but I'm particularly in the TAFE area, and so that we're in an area of producing, I suppose, courses and delivering courses that deliver workplace skills. And as part of that particular program, we've implemented a LIMS package into one of our modules, and you'll see the examples of that as we go along. I am the laboratory manager by position, but everyone in the university tends to get according to the teaching aspects. But our main aim of, I suppose, purchasing a LIMS package was really to give students a understanding and a use of a LIMS package so that at some stage in their workplace, when they actually get out into the workforce, that they'll have some knowledge of what they are, how they actually operate in a laboratory, and be not foreign to it, as most people these days, or probably most places, would encounter with people coming into the area. Certainly, from the laboratory manager's point of view, when you come into a workforce, well then certainly there's a lot of things that they need to have and understand. They need to be familiar with lab systems. and all the processes that happen in the laboratory. The lab managers certainly need to be well aware of what their customer requirements are. They also need to be using technology in the laboratory in order to achieve the best outcomes for the customers, and that's usually based on turnaround times or quality of results. And certainly they've got to be aware of any compliance standards that they need to comply with, for example, NATA. The objective, certainly from our point of view and from the implementation point of view, was first of all to make future lab managers workplace ready. And when we say that, well, we're teaching students who are going through the Diploma of Laboratory Technology, but we understand and really recognise that at some stages they'll be entering the workforce, and some of them will actually then be leading on to or moving on to a laboratory manager's role. And so that they need to be well aware of what a LIMS package is when they get into that particular role. Certainly this package actually does assist teachers in delivering the objectives of the module Use Laboratory Application Software. Now that's got a competency code of 924002A, and you'll see that that particular module is scoped up so that the outcomes of it are in line with what a LIMS package is all about. What we did, we introduced the LIMS package to students, and it's been in place for a couple of years now, as I'll go through a little bit more in future slides. But it's enabled students to gain an understanding of how LIMS works, and I think that's vital for students to actually have some understanding of that before they enter the workforce and before they finish their course. And we certainly can use this package in accordance with what our requirements are for actually teaching this particular module. Certainly from the point of view of what do we want a package to do for us, there are certain things that we thought were important to us, and part of the reason why we ended up choosing the LIMS1 package. For the laboratory job situation, I suppose a means of sampling, of registering samples and giving it an allocated job number, and certainly we look into that in a big way and make stress on that particular point. There need to be some calculations involved in the product so that we could actually show and demonstrate the fact that the LIMS can actually calculate results. We wanted a facility that could track, I suppose, the test status, but also track who was doing what in the LIMS package. So a pure audit trail was one of my main features. Certainly we get students to input data directly into LIMS packages, into LIMS registration, into LIMS job numbers, and that's part of the process of handling data, and we see that it's very important as a function within a laboratory. They generate reports at the end of their process of working with the LIMS package, and they then see a visual, I suppose, outcome of the laboratory practice, which is titled a certificate of analysis, and that's the form report that most laboratories tend to title in a laboratory situation. And also, we want to, in the future, do more of this, is transfer results into LIMS by electronic means, because that's obviously a more reliable, more trustworthy way of doing it. Well, from Swinburne's point of view, we've certainly found the LIMS1 system very easy and very flexible to put in, get set up and put in. It was very easy to implement. I put it into a teaching facility now, and we've advanced it quite a bit since we've had it initially, and it's being used by many students. The LIMS1 package was actually used in many commercial and research laboratories, and so that we were quite keen to actually utilise a package that was fairly commonly used, or well, at least known out in the workplace, because that's the best way for students actually to get an understanding and recognition of a package once they stay in the lab. And it was important to us that the company that was offering this package had the support in Australia, and Altec was one of those companies that was able to deliver that and support us with ongoing support. and set up a true partnership with Swinburne in the operation of actually the area of training this package. So how do we go about it? The implementation process was we confirmed our requirements with LTech, and that then that was our input, saying to them what did we want. LTech then developed an implementation schedule for us to get set up, and I suppose just if I can give you some time scales here, we're talking about step one here, looking at our requirements at the end of 2006. So early 2007 we had an implementation schedule. LTech provided us with a database which we could actually work on and expand and use, and as we saw fit. We then received software through the mail. We actually installed the software, and I installed it on a single desktop PC. Now, from a point of view of installing a LIMS package, I was quite surprised and very alarmed and very pleased by the fact that I could install this particular software onto a PC, and it only took me around about 2 hours actually to install the actual software and get it to a point of then needing some configuration, which is the next point on the slide. And I was able to do all of the configuration that I required from our, at least from our point of view, with the setup tables that an administrator gets access to in the package. Further down the track, probably around about 2 or 3 years after we actually got it on the single PC, and I'll talk a little bit about more about that in a minute, we moved to what we call a teaching laboratory environment. So the process, the application, I suppose the networking aspect of the university was utilised so that we could actually, first of all, we use the package in a teaching laboratory, which is a computer laboratory, so that we could have 24 students, typically 24 PCs, learning and communicating with the LIMS package in one step. And also at the same time I was able to get PCs installed in each of our laboratories. So we've got 7 laboratories in my area, and so each laboratory has a computer set up for configuration to access LIMS, so that each of the students in each of the teachers can actually then get their prac aligned with the LIMS use if they want to. A key part of our process has always been that we have to have follow-up with our supplier, and LTech are very good at that, and we at least communicate on an annual basis in order to get feedback and give them feedback, and for them to understand what our situations and needs are going forward. If I reflect back on what were the top issues or top tips, certainly I believe and understand and can see that the package itself, the LIMS1, was very easy to install and get LIMS1 up and running very quickly. What we weren't able to do at the time when we had to install it was getting our IT people involved in the process, but I would certainly, if you're looking at doing it now or going ahead with this type of action, well then certainly you need to involve your IT people right at the beginning of the process, because they can actually help you get it in place and get it set up to the way that you would like it to operate. And so we had to go through that process, but that was a bit of a tough couple of years we went through. Certainly we wanted to have the ability to teach students aspects of laboratory operations, and coming from a laboratory background myself, certainly I'm well aware of what the laboratory operation is all about, and that is being impacted on what we teach here in this particular module, and certainly the LIMS application. We cover certainly a bit more of the general aspects of laboratory operations and the requirements of laboratories, and even the sample flow through a laboratory facility, so that they can actually see where the LIMS applications are actually utilised in a whole laboratory environment. So we're in a situation of teaching students about the use laboratory application software, and that's, as we understand, is a LIMS package. So we're doing that very well. And certainly we can actually exercise utilisation of LIMS1 in other subjects that teachers do. So that we've got the ability, as I mentioned before, of our LIMS setup to do that. Our outcomes, LIMS1 was being taught very successfully to students in the Diploma of Laboratory Technology predominantly. The department is now looking at adding extra LIMS modules ongoingly across the years to increase our level of learning and teaching aspect. And students have actually come back to me after they've moved on and thanked me for actually being in a situation of providing them with some understanding of what a LIMS package is all about, because they actually, when they get into a workplace, they actually see a system there, and so they have some understanding of what it's all about, and so that they certainly value the hands-on approach that they got when they're going through this particular LIMS training exercise. Now, part of the system, so this is LIMS1. Myself being the administrator, I had to set up the usernames and passwords for all of the students to access. Now, this is coming from the same concept of what you'd use in a commercial laboratory. So you have a unique username and a unique password, and so the students get involved in that, and certainly they need to understand that's the situation. When you log in, you obtain this particular screen. This is the database of the LIMS1 package, and as you'll see on the left-hand side, we have job numbers, and that's a notational job number, script number, which increments by the value of 1 on each time a new job is created. But we work with the year, and then a slash, and then a number after that, and then because of our limitations in our networking aspect in the early stages, particularly in 2012, we ended up with some duplicate numbers, so then we actually added on the end of our number an A, B, C, D approach to actually differentiate the actual numbers. But you see at the top of the window here of the screen of the actual LIMS package, across the top, you've got 4 buttons, and each of those buttons actually is an activity level within the program to direct you into the next, I suppose, action that you need to undertake. So the next slide we'll go into is new job, and you'll see what that button actually does. Before we just move on to that, we'll certainly, doesn't matter, we've gone on to that. This is the new registration screen, so that there's a new number established in the job reference area. We select a sample type. We nominate the number of samples that we're actually are analysing. We select a customer, which is a client. In this case, we've chosen to use LTEC. And you'll see on this particular screen, and this is related to the template for the sample type food type, down the bottom we have a job description, a date analysed, and the sampling method. And the sampling method line down the bottom has these three little box with three dots in it, and that brings up this little box at the bottom that you can see here, the sampling method. And so we've got some options to choose, and so we talk about the actual aspect of laboratory operations being, well, most laboratories receive a sample given to them, and so that they actually analyse it as received. So the notation about that is all we'll discuss. But you can see on this window, we're on the job registration option at the present moment. The next button along is assign tests, and we'll see that in a little while. You've got tests to samples, where you can nominate what test you're going to do on what samples. You can actually look at the client details, and if you need to, edit the client details, and you can actually add some sample comments in if you deem that fit. And in the center of the whole window, you've actually got some enter sample information, so that's where you enter the particular details about each of the samples. This is a client information setup. So if you're establishing a new client, well then these are the type of things that I suppose it's the template that's there and things that you need to actually fill in. So obviously company names, contact people, telephone numbers, fax numbers and stuff like that, who are they, and with this particular aspect, a client can actually specify their methodology to actually produce results in a particular way, so that it's very important that you have your client set up in your package so that you can actually comply with their requirements. In the options area here, where you can't actually, I'm going to view of that, but on the options tabs next to the communications in the right side of the window, there's an area there where I ask the students to enter their name, and if you go back to the database table, you will see their name actually, field on that particular table. So that assess, or at least helps them actually retrieve their work, and so that we actually use this a little bit more to a teaching aspect rather than a commercial environment. Okay, this is the assigned tests screen. So when you have set up your job registration, you then click on assigned tests, and so that this particular sample type of food has a template of moisture, fat and fat dry weight on it when you actually go into it. Now that's been set up due to my background of where I've come from, but you've actually got the ability here to add on tests just by highlighting it and then clicking on the add button at the top left hand corner, or you can actually highlight the test on the sample list, which is in the right hand side box, and remove a particular test by clicking on the remove button. So you can add tests and you can remove tests. And so one of the exercises that I get the students to go through in the module that I've been taking, certainly we go through this task of adding tests on, and for them to actually find the test in this particular list. So after the process of registration, and that's all saved, then we get the students to actually go through a process of entering results into the LIMS package. Now we've got two examples here. The first one at the top and at part of the background part of the slide shows a registration of one sample for a moisture, fat and a fat dry weight calculation. And the fat dry weight calculation, at least from a point of view of being entered, has to be within a certain range. It can't be 1.2 as it is highlighted there, so the actual value is highlighted in red, and the actual cell is highlighted as in yellow, indicating that there's parameters around the particular value that it has to be within in order for the result to be acceptable. So there's a visual situation about it, and also some highlighting of incorrect values if you've got that set up that way. We've just recently set up the fat dry weight calculation so that it utilises the moisture and fat result for a particular sample and calculates that exactly each time, and that's a function which can be done within LIMS, and certainly we're starting to use that and show how to students how an electronic calculation can be more reliable than a manual calculation. On the other registration that's on here, on the right hand side, there's an exercise here where we get them to actually register 10 samples and enter the results on those 10 samples, so that in this particular case they need to actually enter the results to the aspect of the customer's requirements, and here they're just shown as a single digit I suppose values. In all of the work that we do, we end up, the students end up producing a report, and this is a typical report that we would get. It's always titled Certificate of Analysis, because I think that's important that the students understand that the reports that the laboratory produces is called a Certificate of Analysis, and it has the job number, the sample description, and then the test results. And the test results are configured in a way that to the number of decimal places specified by the customer requirements. So that's tied back to the actual customers. So you can see that some of the figures there are a bit small. You can actually see there's 2 decimal places after the decimal point for moisture and fat, but the factor of weight's only 1 decimal place. This is a screen from a data pipe, which is the module that LIMS1 have for exporting data from an instrument and then it being picked up by the LIMS package on a network situation. So this is a slide of what you would see typically from a ICP, analysing multiple elements and analysing many samples, in this case 20 samples. And so that the data package for the ICP can be exported, as can be the data from HPLC, GC, AAs, you name it, anything which is controlled by a computer these days can export data, and so you can electronically match, well, send that data, export it out, and get that picked up by LIMS and entered into the sample numbers, registration numbers, particularly for that particular sample, with the information that goes with it. This is another screen to do with the transfer of data electronically, and you can see on the the right-hand side here at the top, some of the area where samples haven't been tested, results have not been received at this stage, but then the ones sample 5 down do have results actually already entered into those. There's also information on here that you can, with these buttons on the top left-hand side, so that you can actually work out and see what values actually have come in to this particular, I suppose, module, and what data is actually being exported out. The next module, which I suppose I want to talk about, is the analytical batch. Now, I've come from an environment in my past where we used a LIMS package, and on a daily basis we worked out how many tests were required to be done on each particular test parameter, and how many batches in particular of that particular test was being performed each day. And so this analytical batch process can allow you to do that. In this case, you picked out, search the database for suspended solids, and there's a option to change the actual batch size that you actually want to configure. So you end up with a number of batches of suspended solids that need to be tested, I suppose, next day, I suppose, was what way we were working. This is a laboratory operational feature which is good to have. The other important aspect of analytical batch application is the means of tracking quality assurance samples or quality control samples through the process. And this particular one is actually an example of COD, and it's logging or keeping track of each time that sample is analysed and plotting it on a graph. This is a control graph, so all the results probably generally between the pink lines, dotted lines there, will be acceptable, and the ones outside of that certainly will look like they're anomalies. And as part of the laboratory operational process, that if you actually analyse a control sample and the result is not repeated within the reproducibility known about the test, then the batch cannot be accepted, it has to be retested. And this is just explaining or helping to explain that situation of what would happen in these cases.
Thank you very
All
much,
right.
Ron.
So, yeah, if you want to get in touch with me, certainly these are my details, and you can get in touch with me to talk about it a bit further if you like.
Great.
Pass
Thank
it
you very
over
much,
to
Ron. We might just open the line for a couple of questions. So just to repeat that again, we are using the question panel in your control panel. So if you just drop this down, you can post your questions there. And thank you very much. We already got some questions along the way. So I'll just read out a couple. One question that might be more targeted towards LIMS1 is, and Amanda, can you use LIMS1 for maintaining calibration systems?
Look, as I said in the presentation, LIMS1 has got a range of different productivity modules that can be added to the core system at any time. One of the productivity modules that can be added is what we call M-Track, and M-Track is specifically used to calibrate your instruments, and it will let you calibrate them on a schedule that fits in with your needs. So if you've got your GC that needs calibrating once a year or on a 6 monthly time schedule, that can all be incorporated into LIMS1 once you've got the core system.
Great, thank you. Just conscious of time, I think we have time for one or two more questions. Thank you, Katie. There's a question from you. Is there a module for handling images, such as electron microscopy? Actually, that is quite an extensive question. So we actually have a specialist in the team. So we might just answer that question straight after. And there's one more question in regard to implementation time. And I think, Amanda, we hear that a lot. What's the typical implementation for a LIMS1 system?
In terms of there is no typical implementation time frame. It all very heavily depends on the complexity of your system. For a system such as what Ron described, the LIMS1 system can be implemented very quickly and up and going to a live stage within a month for a teaching institution. And for commercial institutions, you can be looking at anywhere from 4 to 8 weeks, depending on the level of complexity involved.
Great, and we'll just get an answer in regard to Katie's question as well. Thank you very much. In regard to handling images, so no, there's no particular module for this right now, but we do get requests from customers to develop modules going forward. So we'll definitely monitor the need for that. We'll get back to you on that specifically because we might still have something for you that might cover what you're after. Great. Well, with that, we are at the end of our webinar. Thank you very much, Ron, and thank you very much, Amanda, and thank you to all of you for taking time out this morning. And we're looking forward to talking to you a little bit more in the week to come. Have a great day ahead and speak to you soon.